watching The Big Scope and welcome to yet another episode of All Tech. On the show today, I've got with me Nikhil Barshikar, who's the founder and MD of Edtech platform Imarticus. Chief, welcome to the show. Before we go on, can you tell our audience a little bit about what's happened with Imarticus in the last couple of quarters? I mean, what new subjects are you folks teaching? How many students are using your platform? Give us a little overview on what has happened in the last 2 quarters.
So inherently, we are in our 5th year of operation Imarticus Learning. We are expanding our product landscape and our geographical diversification. So what that basically means is that our B2C business is growing at about 100 and 150% rate, and our B2B business is growing at similar. So frankly, we're just getting used to the growth metrics, etc., and hiring people, opening up offices, opening up international locations, all that in terms of.
Now, you're right, Chief. Now, but you also need to understand that there are a lot of students in India who go for these online edtech platforms, but the same students also need a kind of an offline approach to the same subject. Maybe because I know so many of them at so many IT companies in India who go for these courses online and these edtech platforms, but they also say let's get together in the evening and look at problem solving issues with something to do with IoT or a data analytics course that they're doing on your platform. So what do you folks have an online plus an offline approach for fintech or data analytics or any of these kind of subjects?
So one, from just a macro trend perspective, right? I mean, the idea of online and offline learning being separate, I think it's too elementary anymore. The idea of, to me, I think learning is mostly blended now, whether people like to accept it or not. So people either will spend 80% or 90% of the time in classroom, but will then go home and Google some concepts, etc. So the very idea that I'm doing offline training versus online training, I think it's not that demarcated anymore. From our perspective, we are definitely in the blend bucket rather than the offline and the online bucket. We believe that, and again, the blend will change depending upon the outcome or depending upon what the course is trying to achieve. I'll give you a simple example. If you're trying to get someone employed in financial services, it makes sense to have a lot more high-touch offline interventions and then keep your online interventions to minimum. Versus someone who's looking to upskill, an IT professional is looking to upskill himself in a particular analytics course, let's say. Then it makes sense to put 80 to 90% to online and do offline interventions just for networking, etc.
So give us an overview of what all subjects do you folks actually are teaching right now? I mean, apart from analytics and fintech, apart from that, what all are you concentrating on?
So we as a company specialize in 2 sectors, right? Finance and analytics. Within finance, we pretty much run the gamut between retail banking, corporate banking, investment banking, and capital markets. So in that, we are looking to upskill people in sales functions and operations functions across these businesses. So that's one area that we spend a lot of time on. The second piece is the analytics piece, which you mentioned. So apart from your data sciences, etc., analytics obviously has different arms to it, like artificial intelligence. We're starting to spend some time on fintech, which is blockchain and robotics. So other than your core ones, which I think are finance, data science, but more of the new functional domains like I mentioned, the blockchain of the world or RPAs of the world, etc.
All right. What about partnership with companies? I mean, I think you have partnered with E&Y. Do you also partner with IT services companies in India, the top 5 IT services companies? Do you also partner with Fortune 500 companies in India, or you are also trying to expand into other geographies? So what about your partnerships? What do these partnerships mean?
So obviously, because our entire vision and mission is to bring the industry closer, this is a given for us in terms of making sure that the industry is incorporated into our curriculum design and delivery to a large extent. We have gone 2 steps ahead and said that we have a category of courses called Pro Degrees, which are launched with the industry partner in conjunction. So, for example, We'll have a financial modeling course with ENY. What that means is ENY will not only give us input on curriculum, but will also come help us with delivery, will also come make sure that their partners are available for questions, etc. etc. And also the certification of this course will be done jointly with ENY and Imarticus Learning. So to us, this was the logical extension of just, maybe earlier we used to get input into curriculum, but now we have actually started creating these pro degrees in conjunction with industry partners. So we have, as you mentioned, IT. We have partnership with IBM, Genpact, on the IT services, for a lack of a better word, IT services. And then otherwise we have on the finance side we have Barclays, we have ENY, we have Motilal Oswal, and we have SAP also, which is on the more IT-ish type of services.
All right. So tell me something else. There are many students in India, or for example, in many parts of Europe that I've known in the last 3 years of understanding what students need in terms of modern age education. Now, there are many students in India who, some of them I've seen, they're excellent in certain kind of program. They're excellent in certain kind of other subjects, but the mode of teaching they're not comfortable in. When I say the mode of teaching, it's the language in which they're being taught on. A lot of students I know, they're great programmers, but they're not comfortable in them being taught in English language. So you are an Edtech platform. You want to go into smaller towns. Tier 3 and Tier 4 towns are something that none of these billion-dollar Edtech firms have gone into. So what about, why not use a regional language approach to educating these students in the Tier 4, Tier 3 towns? I mean, have the same data analytics being taught, say, in a Tamil or a Malayali. Why doesn't that happen?
Short answer, no. For the simple reason, I think because we are very, very job and core competency focused. So what that means is when we put together our courses, we look at the job first. So I don't today, if you ask me how many jobs are there in analytics, and let's pick a town. Let's do Coimbatore for the heck. Coimbatore does not have a lot of analytics jobs right now. So what do I go train and do there, etc. So first, for me, as an industry-led training company, I have to go find jobs first, then find the students to train on, etc. So as we start getting regional specific jobs in areas like analytics, it makes no sense to do those training. Now, but let me caveat it. In finance specifically, what we have started to see some traction on Tier 4, Tier 5 towns is, let's say I'm looking for a relationship manager, a sales guy basically, sales mutual funds. Their regional language is becoming a plus, not a minus. Because I'm more liable to buy it from you because you understand my language and can relate to me than someone who speaks English and wears a suit. In that sense, we have been able to create some programs in Tier 4, Tier 5 towns which are employment focused and take regional language as a plus rather than as a minus. So I think to answer that question, let's look at the macro view a little bit first. If you look at the IT industry first, right, we went through an entire evolution where we grew out the business, where we captured a lot of the market share across the world. India was is number one for IT services, and then we started to mature. This business started to mature to say, look, we have done what we can from an IT offshoring perspective, and what else can we do now? As you start to ask these questions, it became very evident that it's not about cost arbitrage anymore in terms of IT services. You have to add incremental value, or you have to add value to the revenue function rather than just to the bottom line function. When you started asking these questions, then you started saying that, look, the IT services people that we have in India, as skilled as they are not ready for those kind of jobs. And that's when this entire rhetoric about reskilling and skilling started. Not to mention that AI and analytics was more than a buzzword. So I think combination of where the industry is and the combination of these new age technologies coming in is where I think there is a gap in the market from a reskilling perspective for the IT services. Now finance is going through a different evolution stage, right? Finance in India, domestic finance, not offshoring finance, still very nascent if you compare it to our global partners. We are still very underbanked. our credit lending portfolio across our population is still quite low. So I think banking is going through its upward surge in terms of that. So there it's not about reskilling. There it's about frankly skilling. Do we have the right amount of people who can be skilled so that this sector continues to grow? So the IT services guys can talk about reskilling, but the finance guys are just talking about skilling frankly.
Now, the funny thing over here is, now let me ask you, I mean, I might sound naive, but all of it is based on internet. All of this is these courses are, you can have a mobile application, or people have to go on the internet to study these online courses. But in India, especially if you leave the 4 or 5 metros, there is no concept of constant 3G or 4G in smaller towns. So how can a student depend on an online course like this, an online platform? We're talking about reskilling, where there is no constant availability of 3G or even 4G internet in this country.
Absolutely. So specific, and this again goes back to you today. Like I mentioned, all of our learners are from these big cities. Till the one is the availability of good internet, but the second is also the mindset, which both go hand in hand. But it requires investment. It requires time. It requires that maturity in the learner. For example, when you say that someone wants to do an online course, other than his internet, which frankly is a prerequisite, is also you assume that he's a motivated learner. That he needs to come and sit on his computer for 3 hours, 4 hours a day, and that his motivation is in place. Today, a lot of the learners that come to us are not motivated learners. My trainers and my staff take a long time to get these guys to understand the benefits of training, to understand why they should do this course, even after they're paid. So I think this idea of, I don't think that if the answer is that every India town has an internet and then all of a sudden Edtech is going to do lots and lots of business and everybody is going to do online training. I think we'll have to do a lot more than that. We'll have to get the inherent motivation of a consumer right before we start to see sort of large scale implementation of Edtech.
The last 3 or 4 years, or let's look at the last 2 years. There are a lot of job losses which happened in India. So many people lost their jobs last year. People who had steady jobs for the last 10 years, their kids, wives, suddenly overnight they lost their jobs in the IT sector. Now, lot was said about these are the category of people who did not skill themselves enough, who were not good enough in modern age tech skills and all of that. Fair enough. But look at what has happened in the last 2 years, especially with these marketing buzzwords that go around and people write about them without even putting a brain to it. And people talk about, IoT is the next big thing. Analytics is the next big thing. AI is the next big thing. Funny thing, nobody's actually doing AI. ML is the next big thing. Fair enough. But aren't you creating a sense of fear in India where there is so much of supply of students? What happens the next 1 year? There will be so many students who would have been taught or educated in analytics, and there may be so many students in some AI or analytics courses. But where is the demand? Are there actually jobs, or is it just overnight colleges or institutions are coming up? Online platforms are coming up. Aren't you folks creating a sense of fear in India? Are there an actual demand for such kind of jobs? Do you have proof of such kind of jobs in India?
My view is we are a long way off, right? In terms of, because today, if you look at us and you look at, let's say, the top 10 other players that we have, etc., the amount of volume that we do is still a fraction of what the demand is and what the opportunity could be. So if you put us all together, we must, the new age players, the new Edtech partners, at best do, 50,000 to 75,000 students a year. That is nowhere close to your overall number of students that are available that need to be reskilled or need to be trained. To me, so I was saying that with numbers like doing 50,000 a year or even 100,000 a year, we are a long way off from an entire demographic perspective in terms of impact. The other issue that I see is that a lot of us players, including us, we are still very tier 1 and tier 2 heavy. If you look at our online training, most of our learners come from the top 5 cities. 80% of our learners come from top 5 cities, and last 20 are the tail that comes from maybe the top 15 cities. You and me both know that's not where the majority of the population is. So when we talk about online training, I think unless online training goes to tier 3 and tier 4 towns, I don't think you'll ever, bridge that gap quickly.
Couple of last things, Chief. The last so many months, if I can put it, last 3 or 4 years, the world has seen a huge upsurge of Edtech companies, Edtech startups. Funding has happened to Edtech startups like nobody's business. You want to become so these are the easier, like you want to get into e-commerce, there will be 10 VCs, I will fund you. You want to get into Edtech, there will be 10 VCs who want to fund you without even thinking whether that will make sense or not. Point is, there are so many Edtech companies in the world today. Now, good, it's a great thing for as consumers, as a student, I'm happy I can get the same course at a discounted price at another platform. But having said that, where does a student go through? All 10, 20 or 30 of EdTech platforms today, they have the same type of courses, but what about the uniformity? I go on a platform A, which is teaching me something related to data analytics, that has a different course structure. I go to another EdTech platform, which is $1 billion funded from the Silicon Valley, that has a different analytics course structure. So what are you guys teaching? Where is that uniformity? There has to be some course structure. Now, if two institutions teach you two different versions of the same subject, what happens to that student? So why is there no uniformity in course structure for these $1 billion EdTech firms?
The question is, it's a very good question, but I don't think it's got to do anything with EdTech or non-EdTech. I think the question still is still valid for even your traditional form of education. So what we did was, obviously we had the degrees which were uniform, right? The problem became is they're so uniform, they're completely useless. So now then the idea was, then can we create customized, flexible, industry-led curriculum faster that evolves, etc. And that's what players like us and a few others are doing, etc. In that sense, to me, uniformity is of less importance, but more how do you judge your content to be industry relevant and finally how it meets its outcomes. How does the consumer judge that is very, very important. I think, frankly, the only way to judge that is through, what the company has been doing and what it's been able to achieve in its placement ratios or upskilling ratios. But I think the idea of uniform content, I frankly would stay away from it, because I think we have the degrees for uniform content, and you and me both know where that ended up or where that is ending up in terms of. So I think one is that we have about 15 to 18 programs in finance and analytics. We'll go to about 30 or so in the next 2 quarters. Geographically, we are in about 10 locations. We'll go to about 15 to 18 locations. Internationally, we are in Dubai, so we are opening up in Southeast Asia and in Africa this year. So that's an international view. We have about 200 people in the firm right now, which is across about 10 different locations. But most of us, 80 of us, sit out from home.
Lovely, lovely. Nikhil, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for being so open-hearted about your views on what's happening in the EdTech sector. What are you folks doing? What are the challenges? And until next time, this is Aritra signing out for The Big Scope.